there's a temptation in a business to, once you get to a certain level, to kind of plateau and be like, okay, I'm good with this level. I've made it. Let's just coast for a while. I'm comfortable, right? And he warned us against that. Welcome to Diesel Stories, where we sit down with professionals across the industry to hear about their journey. I'm Jacob Findlay, along with Chris O'Brien, and today I tell my story.
All right, so Jacob, there's a lot going on here. We got Fullbay. We were going through this at another company, so I've known you for a little bit. Where did you get the inspiration to start Fullbay?
It's a great question, Chris. It was actually, I guess, 8 years ago this month when we're recording this. But a friend of mine owned a diesel repair shop, and he actually is the one that had to explain to me about the industry, period. I didn't really process ever that this industry even existed, the industry of commercial repair. You just kind of assume that, you know, the trucks get fixed by maybe the fleet that owns it, and maybe a car repair shop will do it. And it's, so he helped me understand that, and we became friends. And we actually set up this kind of weekly meetup with 3 couples. So by that time I knew what a diesel repair shop was. And I was also in the middle of helping build a different software company for physical therapists, and helping build in that I ran the finance side, right? And I had previously done another software company that was a startup that we grew up in and sold off. So over time, I had kind of like gotten the itch to try to make a run out of myself. Like, I wonder if I could actually do this. The first time I walked into, but the first time I saw the founder of the first software company I worked for walk by, and I knew who he was, I was like, oh, wow, that guy's a founder. Not only did I never think that could be me, but I was just in awe, right?
Yeah.
And then as time went on and we grew that one, and then I went to another one, I came to realize that founders are just normal people, right? That maybe they're really smart in some areas, really hard workers. The stars align somewhat for them, maybe. It's mostly not that, though. It's mostly hard work and perseverance. And I started to get this itch to make a run at it. So when he mentioned that he couldn't find the software, it kind of hit, a light bulb kind of went on for me. Like, wait a minute, what if we build this? And so I convinced him of the idea, right? And we started meeting super early mornings and trying to hash out what that would look like. So
wow. So, kind of like hearing about this industry and not being familiar with it, what was like just one shocker moment where you were just blown away by the commercial repair industry that you just had no idea, that on your top 5 or your top 3 for, whoa, I didn't know that?
I think it was the first time I saw an owner throw a chair. I don't know. I'm just joking. But I always thought I've always been fascinated with the idea of, well, not always, but since, getting into the healthcare industry, with this idea of software as a tool for healing people. And the dirty secret that I discovered early on, and it's getting better now, but was that electronic medical records, for the most part, were not there for healing people. They were there for billing people. And there was a lot of great research out there. The first company I worked for, Carifex, near the end, as I delegated a lot of my responsibilities, I was able to get involved more and more on the product side, and reading some of the amazing research that was out there being produced by really smart people about how software could be used to heal. And I think it was in 2009, Congress passed the High-Tech Act. I think it was part of the overall stimulus, but which basically mandated that hospitals adopt some sort of meaningful electronic medical record. And so there's this rush to adopt like kind of the old guard, Epic and Cerner. And it kind of quashed a lot of the innovation that was going on, and that we were also going through the downturn then. So I think before the High-Tech Act, if healthcare was 10 years behind, the High-Tech Act maybe put it another 5 years behind. technology speaking, that's still trying to catch up. And so these ideas were getting quashed, and part of kind of the light bulb moment for me was this idea of, well, these are all awesome ideas. Truck repair is really similar to healthcare in that preventive maintenance plays such a huge role. And my friend who ran a shop totally believed that, and he was right. And he ran a shop that way. And so the idea was, can we take some of these really good ideas from the electronic medical records world that maybe are not seeing the light of day about how software can be used as a tool to heal, and apply them in truck repair, to use software as a tool to heal, sure, trucks, heavy equipment, but same concept. And the more I thought about this and started, I don't want to get too far ahead, but started working in the industry, the more I started to see the value of this, not just for trucks, but Chris, I remember you told me once, when we were working together. So I was a web PT at the time. We were working together, right? Yep. And you mentioned one day, because you had run the fleet over at Shamrock for a period, and you mentioned that you never want to be on a freeway right next to an 18-wheeler, right? You never want to drive right next to them, because you said something like, all that has to happen is a kingpin goes out. And at the time you might have said kingpin, but that went right over my head because I had no idea what a kingpin was. And a swerve's in front of you, you hit it, and there's a fireball, and you and your family are gone, right? That's all. So like ever since then, I've always been very careful to avoid it. And as my kids have grown up, told them to do the same thing. But if you think about it, we know, so we've supported some great charities. One of them, Truckers Final Mile, where they help drivers get home when tragedy strikes, or the family of a driver who's suffered a fatality get the body home and stuff. It's more than 2 drivers a day die from accidents, and then I think it's higher than that. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but a lot of people die from highway fatalities related to trucks. A lot of it's driver error, but some of it's equipment failure. Yeah. And so anyway, just connecting is this idea that on some level you can connect it back into at least public health, where the roads can get safer. So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of rambled there, but
yeah, no, it's great because, and to tie back to that comment that you made earlier is like, if you buy a truck with a reputable company, they're probably on top of their PM. Yeah. So you can have that shelter the sun from you. Right. But if you're buy a truck, no name, it's not clear. Oh, yeah, it looks a little shady. Yeah. That's the one that you don't have it block the sun.
I've definitely learned that over time. Yeah. When you can tell a truck, and it's the same kind of truck where a lot of times, a shop owner, maybe it's a walking customer. He sees the truck and he's like, never mind. I'm not gonna touch your truck because I know I'm gonna get blamed for something that goes wrong. But yeah, totally. Yeah. You can trust some of them.
Yeah. So, we, a lot, your background in software, we know, or we've heard it from the Fullbay story. But you have a fascinating story of just growing up and the education. You're a very smart guy who's, I don't think a lot of people know about your education and your background. And it wasn't like your parents were well-to-do and had you, at a full ride Harvard Ivy League school funded.
No, it was not like that at all.
Red carpet treatment there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm the middle of 7 kids, and my father was a school teacher, worked really hard to support the family, did piano tuning on the side to kind of make ends meet. He was a music teacher. And I was actually almost born in Arizona, kind of near where you grew up, not in Tucson, but the Gila Valley. Okay. So I live here now in Arizona, but I kind of have to like dig for my roots. So almost was born there. My dad was teaching school out there, moved to Utah. That's where I ended up being born. But yeah, didn't have a lot growing up. My parents certainly loved us. They were great parents and everything. But I didn't really I ended up going to college, but I remember listening to a news report maybe when I was 12 years old about a state college down the road capping enrollment and thinking, well, that's it for me. Like, they're capping enrollment. There's no way I can get in now. And even though I was getting like straight A's in school, but I never thought, I don't know, I just never really had kind of the connection there. So grew up, played the cello. I still play. And My dad was my teacher actually through 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And then by the time I got to 11th grade, they had built a new high school. My dad was taking over the music side there, and I was required to go by the district. So he was my teacher again, junior and senior year.
Lovely.
Yeah, which had a lot of benefits and some downside, but yeah, that was kind of my background. And when I went to college, I had to pay my own way. So I applied for FAFSA, got some Pell Grants, and got a scholarship, academic scholarship, but like for food and housing and stuff like that. Like I worked as hard as I could in the summer, and then went to college and blew through the money very carefully. Like one
tight budget,
1 gallon of milk shared with my brother, who was my roommate, all week. We were very careful, and did that. And I basically continued doing that through college. Eventually I guess between my sophomore and junior year, I sold pest control in Arizona.
All right.
So I hooked up, I had $90 to my name by the end of the school year. And that's how much a Southwest ticket from Salt Lake City to Phoenix was. So
okay.
I got to Phoenix. Some friends I was selling with picked me up. I literally had nothing to my name, but by the end of the summer, I had saved enough for a car and to support me through school the next school year and stuff like that. Had met my now wife by then, and she was down here in Arizona for the summer from school. And but yeah, that was kind of my school experience. So I served a Mormon mission in Austria in the middle of all this, and I remember kind of speaking to the self-confidence thing. So you pay your own way, right? So I worked really hard to save for that. My parents, I mean, I couldn't save enough for it, so my parents supported me through there, which was a great sacrifice. But I remember nobody really listened to us. I went to Austria, right? They're all Catholic, and I totally respect that. We had great times hiking mountains and stuff like that on our free time. But I remember we were required once a month to go to like an opera or something. And at the time I was serving in the city in Vienna, and we got our like cheap standing room only opera ticket to an opera, and went around the corner for like a treat, which was to eat at Subway restaurant. So we walk in, and there was like the dean of the Mary School of Management from BYU standing there, like randomly in Vienna in Europe, and just standing there. So we ended up, my companion and I ended up eating dinner with him and got some advice from him. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and I get a degree in accounting from BYU, and my master's, I stick around for my master's degree, and then start out in Phoenix for Deloitte & Touche. And I had kind of gotten the itch to become a professor of accounting.
Yeah, that's what I thought was fascinating. This is where I'm like, so how do we go from professor? Because like you could have been a professor at BYU or a college.
So when I was at BYU, I had on-campus jobs. One of them was as a research assistant for a professor, and we ended up co-authoring a paper together, which was fun. We did the research and all that stuff, got it published. And I also had the opportunity. So that state college, I didn't think I could ever get into. I taught 2 semesters of accounting there. So not only did I taught there when I was in college. So it just goes to show sometimes we underestimate ourselves, right? And I enjoyed teaching and so forth. But when I graduated, this was shortly after 9/11. So I guess I graduated in 2004, and you start applying for internships, I guess, between your junior and senior year, and nobody was doing internships. So what ended up happening was Deloitte & Touche that's one of the big 4 accounting firms. There used to be 5. Arthur Andersen went down with Enron, but instead of doing internships, they were just doing super early offers. So I ended up getting an offer to work for this prestigious accounting firm, maybe, like 15 months before graduation. So I knew well ahead of time that I had a job, but no internship. So I sold pest control that summer again, between junior and senior years. And then I stayed an extra year, 5th year for a master's degree. Forgot where I was going with that, but
you were going to be a PhD.
Oh yeah. So I was taking all the classes like econometrics and classes I really had no business being in, because I'm not really in. I mean, I studied accounting, so on and so forth, but and I can do the numbers and everything. I can do the math, and I get all the stats and everything, but like the deep econometrics, I didn't have a lot of time to study at the time. I had a child by then. I was married, had a kid, another one on the way. I was working like 25, 30 hours a week plus going to school full time. So I don't know, I was kind of burnt out by then. But I was taking all the classes I needed to get into a good PhD program. So most of my friends that were doing that too went right on to a doctoral program. I had this offer and it was kind of like, do I go actually make some money, or do I continue with school? And I was kind of feeling burned out. So I decided I'll go for a couple of years, get some real work experience so I could speak with like authority, at least when I'm a teacher, instead of just being like a theorist. So I accepted the offer, and then eventually took the tests and everything, applied to some great graduate schools, got into a great program. And about a month, so this is after a couple of years working in public accounting, which was awesome, by the way. It was hard work, but some pretty cool clients, like Fender, the guitar company.
Oh, nice.
Was one of our clients. Yeah. So I remember doing an inventory, end of year inventory, walking around with the team there at the factory, I think in Ontario, California, and just observing the inventory, make sure everything's running correctly. So I'm like the snot-nosed kids right out of school. One of the great things of being an auditor is they like shove you right in to like doing relatively important stuff. And I'm walking around with like the CFO of Fender and her entourage, and everybody in the factory can't leave until my inventory observation, me like testing that they did the inventory right, was done. And it was like Christmas. Like everyone wants to go home to their family to start celebrating Christmas. So that was pretty fun. And they brought me into the custom shop and showed me these cool guitars they were making for like famous people who I should have recognized. But in my family, we were only allowed to like listen to classical music and the Carpenters. Right. So I didn't hear the Carpenters in there. There were some really cool stuff, and they should have sent somebody that could really appreciate what was going on there. I felt really bad. But yeah, Fender, Rockford, Fosgate, they were one of our clients, Taser, and a bunch that you've never heard of. Most people have never heard of, but it's pretty interesting. And yeah, so get into a doctoral program, decide about a month out that this is no knock on teachers. My father's a teacher. I really respect people who teach and research. But for me, I just had this realization that if I read a really good business book, I want to go out and like apply it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like go out into the market and just like destroy people with, like destroy the competition by executing on what I just learned. I thought I can't imagine spending the rest of my career, I guess, teaching and not actually out there like doing business. And I really felt the pull. And sometimes you have to get right up to the edge, right, to realize what the right decision is. And that was definitely one of those cases. So it was actually, the program I chose was local, U of A. So I can't, maybe it's been enough time now, but I took up one of their doctoral slots.
Well, being from Tucson, I can't, that's just flawless.
Yeah,
right there.
I know. Would have been good. It was there or Iowa, or kind of my choices were down to. So, decided not to do it. And then I found myself in public accounting. Like, what am I doing in public accounting? The whole idea was to get experience to become a professor. I'm not doing that anymore. And I ended up getting the opportunity to go help this company, Carifex, in Scottsdale, electronic medical records company. And so went and joined the team there as the controller. So basically the number 2 finance guy, and the rest is kind of history. It's just an incredible ride there. So
it's just amazing. Super impressive. I don't know that a lot of folks know that you were right there. You were going to be a teacher at a college, and you taught at another school, and you're very well educated. A lot of my friends are doing that now. Yeah. They're running departments and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very impressive. So with all of that, you've got, in school, you're successful, and in business, we're seeing you're successful. Who's your inspiration?
My inspiration, definitely my wife is awesome, super supportive.
She is pretty cool. The few times I have met her, she's pretty cool. I'm like, wait a minute, she's cool, Jacob. Okay, he's cool. Yeah, I think you're cool because she's cool.
Yeah, I think that's true. When I was at BYU, it's funny. Do you ever have that nightmare where you like realize you signed up for a class and never showed up? Yeah. And then it's the end of the semester and like, holy cow, what am I doing? I know I have that one all the time. I literally lived that. So I mentioned I was taking all these classes that I didn't have any business being in so that I could prepare for a PhD program. Well, I had taken so many that I could get an economics minor if I took this one other class that really wouldn't help me get into a PhD program, but would have given me the minor, which maybe would have helped me. Anyway, so I go to sign up for the class. Well, it's being offered at the exact same time as this other one that I desperately wanted to take. It was an entrepreneurship class taught by Larry Miller, who at the time was the owner of the Utah Jazz. And he would only teach this class, I think, once a year, spring term. And they would only allow, I think, 12 to 15 people, something like that, in the class. And so I was faced with this dilemma. Do I want to get my econ minor and help my prospects of getting into a doctoral program? Or do I want to take this entrepreneurship class from like a living legend, basically? He was a billionaire, I believe, at the time. So which one did I choose? I signed up for both classes, and they met at the exact same time. So the idea was I would show up for the tests, get enough of a passing grade in the econ class that I would get the minor, but I would actually go to the entrepreneurship class. And that's what I did. And it turns out the minor was meaningless. I should have not even done that. The worst thing was it gave me a bad grade on my transcript, which probably hurt me big time trying to get into like an elite program. So it is what it is. So anyway, but with this class with Larry Miller, it was incredible because he, self-made man, grew up in Salt Lake City, worked for a dealer. Let's see, what's the story? He, when he's a teenager, he was liked to race cars down State Street in Utah, and got to know the parts guys really well. And eventually he got a job at a parts counter, eventually at a Toyota dealership. He could still like rattle off part numbers from like a 1972 Toyota, like had them memorized. The guy was amazing with numbers. Eventually he starts taking over parts. I think we have a blog article about this where I talk about it, where he was running the parts counter or the whole parts department for a dealership in Utah, I think Murray, Utah. And the owner or the general manager, somebody was like, had an issue with the parts guys, and Larry was in his office talking to him. The guy's like, parts guys are a dime a dozen. And so the story goes, Larry reaches into his pocket, pulls out a dime, throws it at him, and he says, "There's a dime. Go get yourself a dozen parts guys." And he got the whole department to quit.
Oh, wow.
Anyway,
wow.
Something like that. But he definitely instilled respect for parts guys in us. And eventually he became a general manager, I think, out in Colorado of a dealership. And at the age of 35, he was given the opportunity to buy his first dealership. So he was older, 35 when he first started this. And by the time I knew him, when he was probably 60, he was who he was. He bought the Jazz in the mid 80s, and this was 20 years after that. So anyway, but the way he would teach, he would bring in. So he had his own philosophies, right? So he talked to us about how, at the end of the day, we all have to work, right? He told the story of like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right? Where, they get cast out and they are required to sweat for their bread, basically. He's like, at the end of the day, no matter what you do, you got to sweat for your bread. So it's just a matter of what you're going to do. Everybody has to choose. Are you going to work for yourself or work for somebody else? And he would have us kind of write down principles we learned and stuff like this. It was really good, but he would also bring in his friends who were successful entrepreneurs, and we would just like glean as much as we could from these guys. So I learned so much from that class that to this day, I still go back through my notes and recall, and just from his example of he was successful because he just worked so hard. He was a smart guy and savvy and everything, and he went after opportunities. But one thing he told us once, and I didn't know him like personally, right? I mean, there was 15 of us. I got everything I could out of it, but I still consider him a mentor from the experience. Was a lot of people think that business owners and entrepreneurs and everything, and this goes for shop owners, right? Or any kind of owner, are they're risky people. They like to take risks. And he said, the most successful people I've ever known are also the most risk-averse people I've ever known, because they work as hard as they can to eliminate as much of the risk of the equation as possible, and then they go after it.
Interesting.
And so it's just stuff like that, right?
Good
mentor.
Very, very interesting. So, yeah. Well, that's great. So inspiration and mentor, and so that leads to, and that's amazing. Like most people, well, you can't speak with Larry Miller today,
right?
So that love the way that you chose, and then you figured out a way and you knew what was most important, because I think
Yeah.
it's prevailing, right? It's teaching you, you're successful. You've continued to be successful after that, and you're working in the business, not theorizing.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So I imagine to get something started costs a lot of money. Everyone's like, well, I can never start anything. You know, it would take all this money to get this thing going. How did you get things started for Fullbay?
With Fullbay?
Yeah.
So so we graduated from college. We had to borrow money for a down payment. Luckily, this was back in the day when they were loaning money to anybody. This is right before the lead up to the financial crisis. So we bought a house in 2004. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, and we've always tried to live within our means, like live way below. When I get to CareFX, they would pay a quarterly bonus. It was kind of like it's basically part of your compensation. You got it every quarter. So I would just methodically shove it into a savings account, just wouldn't touch it. Like that was not part of my compensation, and would build it up that way. Bought some rental property. Like when the market fell out, I don't know how you experienced it, but we had bought our house for, maybe just under 300,000. The one that we were in at the time. And at one time it was worth like 90. So we were way underwater. And a friend of mine made a pact that, we would, instead of walking away, and I don't fault anybody that walked away, but we decided we weren't going to walk away. We're going to stay in the neighborhood where our kids had friends, so on and so forth. And we were going to not only get out from being underwater, we were going to completely pay off our house. We're going to do it. Right. So that was kind of the mindset. So instead of like laying down and dying in desperation or whatever, I went out and bought a friend of mine helped me figure out how to buy some little apartments, like a 3-plex and a 4-plex out of foreclosure, fixed them up my evening, stuff like that. So just like different things like that. One of them that we bought, we didn't realize, for some reason, this didn't come up in the inspection. We didn't realize until after we'd already bought it that all the wiring had been cut out from the attic. We had to rewire the entire thing. It was a 4-plex, 1-story 4-plex, so kind of a shared attic. Anyway, so I spent a lot of time up in that attic in the heat, like rewiring it. I got a lot of help from professionals, but had to pay for it, right? So just like methodically over time, saving money. So by the time, and one of the good things about so with CareFX, it grew up and it sold, and I had some shares being the controller there. And then similar thing with WebPT, we sold to private equity firm there. So and would always just never touch the money. And so by the time it came to, I guess, live on savings, which you kind of have to do sometimes we didn't raise money with Fullbay, right? In the beginning, we bootstrapped it. And so there was a long time where we were living on savings. So I literally had 6 kids at the time. And then a 7th while we're kind of on the journey. I guess we'll talk about that, but
we'll get to that.
But burning through savings. So just, it's like what we preach to the shops all the time. Like, pay yourself first and make sure you're putting money into a reserve, like into a savings account, and just treat it like an expense, like it doesn't exist. It's amazing. It's amazing the peace of mind you find. It's amazing the distinction. Like, if you live above your means, your life is full of stress. If you live below your means, your life is like peace.
Yes.
I mean, all other things being equal, but anyway, that's the idea.
So, and I recall, like, even when I started, we, obviously some of the early folks in leadership, and, you went without a salary for a long period of time. Like, you didn't pay yourself. And I remember we were having a conversation, you decided to pay me instead of pay you just to get another employee.
Well, I never thought I could actually land Chris O'Brien at Fullbay.
No.
So when the opportunity came up, yeah, totally. But yeah, so I guess we should talk about that. So we were a WebPT together, right? You come in and I don't want to tell your story for you, but like basically do what we do there, learn a ton about growing and scaling a SaaS company, right? And about what it takes and so forth. And it came to the point where I felt like I needed to go work on this project full-time, on Fullbay full-time. And I had an opportunity to go work in a shop And originally I was going to purchase half of the shop. Didn't end up doing that. But the idea was to go work in a shop, finish building Fullbay, and start selling, right? Selling it to other shops, selling access. So you were still a web PT at the time. I was in charge of the finances. I didn't hold the CFO title there. They were not giving out C-level titles at the time to anybody but the founders and the CEO. But I was in charge of all of the money. So preparing board presentations, stuff like that. It was essentially the role
of a CFO.
But I will never claim to have held the title, just to be clear. Does that make sense, Chris? You got that? All right.
Yes.
Anyway, so leave there to go work in a truck shop. And the timing worked out where I think the first day at the truck shop was a Monday. I left on a Friday, and that Monday was my birthday. And it was my 35th birthday, the same age Larry Miller was when he bought his first shop. And to me, it just kind of worked out that way. But I deliberately timed it a little bit because it felt almost poetic. Like, okay, if I'm going to make a run at it, I'm going to try to follow what Larry did as closely as possible. This is one little minor, probably insignificant way, but at least I'm doing it the same way he is, if that makes sense. So,
fair enough.
So that's the idea. Yeah.
Well, and it's amazing. So a lot of, just like you said, being smart with your money, you bought something and sold it, from the apartment complex. You were very strategic about building your savings account. And then along the way, you had bonuses and stuff.
Right.
I think a lot of folks out there will go buy a new car, start to go outside their means, go buy another house. And then pretty soon, you're right, it's stressful. You were very intentional, it sounds like, in the way that you managed money to get you in this spot. But then there was sacrifice. What, your kids, like your family, what were they saying when you were doing all of this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we always made it work. Like they weren't suffering necessarily. Is that what you mean? Like,
or just thinking that you're crazy, not behind it?
Like, yeah. Okay. So, a lot of people thought I was crazy. It's like to leave the position I was in with amazing prospects, left shares on the table that were worth a lot of money a few years later, to go work in a truck shop at a time when people didn't even know. Like, I knew what the industry was, and I had a pretty good idea of what the need was and what we could accomplish by starting Fullbay. Most people didn't have any clue. They just thought I was crazy. Like, what is he thinking? And there's like anybody that started a business will know this feeling of, or maybe you've had a friend where they tell you their idea and you feel a little bit embarrassed for them because it's nice that they have that idea, but that's not going to work. Have you ever felt like that with somebody? Yeah. I'm sure everyone's had a friend that you felt that for. Well, if you started one, almost without question, you probably had other people feeling embarrassed for you because they didn't get it, right? And a lot of times businesses fail, right? So when I left, people, told me I was crazy to my face. I heard things later of what was said behind my back. And you kind of have to be strong and kind of have the vision. Luckily, it worked out. It totally worked out. It was still hard. Working in the shop was hard. Basically had to start living on savings at that point. So yeah.
Well, yeah. And then you have a 7th child while all this is going on, and now 8, right? Yep,
so that's right.
But it sounds like you had a good, stable family support structure.
Yeah. My wife was totally behind it, more so than I was. And she was right there. I mean, we got married really young, while we were still in college. She'd already graduated by then. She graduated pretty fast. She's really smart. But she came into one of the entrepreneurship classes where Larry Miller brought in his wife, Gail, and they kind of talked through things. And I think all of that was just part of like the preparation for, okay, this is what it takes. It's going to take some sacrifice. And by the way, the Millers are great examples. Gail talked about how she still like clipped coupons, and like, I think they were living on like $3,000 a month, $3,500 a month at the time that they're like billionaires, right? Oh, wow. Which is crazy. But that's kind of how you do it. She read books like The Millionaire Next Door, where you know that people that accumulate money are not the ones that blow money, right? Those are two separate groups of people, essentially. Mm-hmm. You're not going to accumulate it. So she was super supportive. My kids were. I've kept them in the loop every step of the way of how things are going, because I know as a kid, you can get stressed out about things really easily, and you have to be sensitive to that. So I've always been super transparent with my kids about how things are going, and just to make sure they are aware. And it's kind of nice because my kids have grown up with the company, and I'm able to like share stuff with them, and they get it. They're like, oh, that's amazing, because I remember when this and this, and we were struggling with this. Cool. So yeah.
So what keeps you going through the good times? Like, so, so I mean, that's a follow up to the good times and the bad times. What keeps you going? Like, as things are going well and not well, like, do you ever just get content and start coasting, or do you, how do you, cause it's, you know, if there's adversity, you're trying to rise above it. So sometimes the hard times are easier.
Yeah, exactly.
But when things are going good, some might say, hey, things are good right now. What keeps you going?
Yeah, it's that whole thing of, you know, are we agents to act or objects to be acted upon? And it sure is nice when people are like cracking the whip on us. So then we don't have to like be our own source of energy. But when things are going well, you know, one of the things Larry warned us about is there's a temptation in a business to, once you get to a certain level, to kind of plateau and be like, okay, I'm good with this level. I've made it. Let's just coast for a while. I'm comfortable, right? And he warned us against that, because he basically was saying, look, you know, if you want to do that, then fine. But if what you really want to do is like grow really big, you have to understand that usually the limitations that we run up against are limitations that we impose on ourselves. That if we continue figuring it out, we can continue to execute and grow. And with growing a business, that means like installing maybe a leadership level that didn't exist before, because you've gotten to that point where you have to delegate things down. You cannot be the one making all the decisions. You have to delegate responsibility and stuff like that. So how do good times go? I don't know, Chris. Most business owners live in a constant state of paranoia, and I definitely, I'm always in that state, just wondering, what's our contingency plan if this happens, or this, or this. And so I guess I'm still midstream right now in kind of paranoia, making sure all bases are covered, everything's taken care of, nothing goes wrong.
Yeah. And I guess even to help add to that, that's a great point, is I often notice that you don't settle. It's very much like Lean Six Sigma, or they say painting a battleship. As soon as you're done painting the battleship, it's time to start all over, because it takes you this enormous amount of time. And it really seems like even when things are going good, you're still painting the battleship. Like, you never stop painting.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Fullbay goes, I'm really happy with how far we've gotten it, and simple software is extremely difficult to build. Like, anybody can build like super complicated software, and I'm really proud of how over time Fullbay becomes more and more capable, but also in a lot of ways more like simpler, right? And we have a lot of work going into that. The vision from 6, 7, 8 years ago of what we wanted to do, we're still just scratching the surface of it, because it's hard to build software. It just is. And so I'm really happy with where we are so far, but like knowing the gap, like where we want to get, definitely keeps me going.
Nice. Very nice. Here's something, what is the craziest story that you have? It could be work related, personal. What is just the craziest story you've got? Everybody has one.
The craziest story. Oh, geez.
And we could keep it to just work if that makes it easier.
The craziest work story. Jeez. That I can legally tell.
Okay. Well, there you have it, folks.
I don't know. It's a good question. I'll have to think. Let's come back to that one, Chris.
Yeah, fair enough. And then, okay. So how about this? We're building business. You're using your finances. Things are going good. What's your worst financial hit? Where was this point? Was there ever a point where you were at this low financially and just were unsure?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about the housing crisis. So where I was, I was doing as good a job as I could to live within my means. And suddenly I found myself like $200,000 underwater essentially on our house. It wasn't that much because we had put money down, but, things were tough, back in like 2008, 2009 during that time period. And I remember pulling into my neighborhood and thinking, this this sucks. I hate this neighborhood because, it's just drained me and I'll never recover. I don't know how I'm going to recover from this. And the pact with my friend, who was one of those 3 couples, by the way, that we'd meet up with regularly, he's awesome, Steve, helped with that, and started to get proactive. So got those a 3-plex and a 4-plex here in Phoenix, and then also got partnered with my brother-in-law to buy a couple rental homes, which we thought were at the bottom of the market. We thought the market had bottomed out. It turns out it had not bottomed out. So we bought it still on the downswing. And we talked about this a little bit in another episode, but the idea was we get this house and we are renting bedrooms to one at a time to ASU students, to girls that went to ASU. And it was a 4-bedroom house and it was losing money. And we were having to put money in every month.
So you have an investment, and so this might be the crazy story, but you have an investment where you're trying to make money.
Right at break even. Yeah. So we decided we would cover the utilities and everything. So they were paying like, I don't know, $400 or $500 a month for the room, and that would include utilities. So we had to cover the mortgage and the utilities, and then of course maintenance. The house was built in the 50s or something, so there was always something going wrong. Well, we were at, one thing my wife has always insisted is that we go to the beach at least once a year. So we live in Phoenix. It's not that far of a drive. And we've kind of got this tradition of going every year around the 4th of July. So we're out there. My brother-in-law's out there too, because we'll go with family a lot. And we both are on our way to Chase Bank to put money in yet again to cover the shortfall. And when we get back, I kind of had this idea because the girls we were renting it to had shoved a king size mattress into the study room of the house. So it's a 4-bedroom house plus a study, relatively small room, but geez, it fit a king size mattress. And the idea just hit me, like, if they're willing to do whatever they're doing in that room, then maybe we could convert that thing to another bedroom. One thing leads to another. I think it cost us $5,000 or $6,000, but we expanded that room, took out some of the garage, and split this huge laundry room and made another bathroom, just like a basic 5x8 bathroom, right? And we were able to rent that additional bedroom for $400 a month. Suddenly it was profitable. Oh. And there's just something about that where, even though it has nothing to do with software companies or truck repair or anything, it's just basic business. Something about being down, kind of like what you said, adversity. It's almost easier with adversity because it forces you to figure stuff out and to like innovate. That was definitely adversity. And there's something that like clicked for me, like, wait a minute, I'm actually capable of making something profitable. You know what I mean? Of turning something around myself with nobody else help. It was my idea. My brother-in-law helped a lot, but we executed it. And suddenly it was profitable. And so anytime I've been in a situation where since then, where from a business perspective, things are like looking down or whatever, I remember that you just fix it, right? You don't lay down and die, you fix it. Nothing is so hard that it can't be fixed from a business perspective, unless you've gotten yourself way dug into a hole. And hopefully you're tracking your metrics well enough that you turn it around well before that happens, right? But if you find yourself in a pinch, it is possible to turn it around. It's not doomsday, so on and so forth. So that's my story. So
would you, with all of that, would you do anything different?
I would not have bought any of those rentals. I would have kept my powder dry cash-wise and been like my friend that was buying, I guess, foreclosures off the courthouse steps or something like that.
So I was just going to say, do you have any advice for somebody? That might be advice right there. But yeah. Do you have any advice for anyone who's looking to start software or just,
or anything? Yeah. I mean, look, so in what we do, we do a delicate dance because we put out a lot of content on how to start a diesel repair shop, how to run it, how to be profitable. And that's geared toward the owners of the shop, right? Who ultimately are our customers for what we do. And the delicate dance is, well, they're technicians, are they going to split off and do their own thing? One thing that I've realized is that not everybody's cut out to be a business owner. Some people want the stability of a regular paycheck. It is stressful, right? To be somebody like who creates a business from nothing. It's stressful. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of risk in it. And so if you feel, I guess my advice to somebody is it's okay if you're not a business owner. You don't have to be one to be like cool or anything. It's in fact super admirable to work and help grow a company and be part of the team. Essentially, that's okay. Like everyone's got their own skill set. For people who want to, I guess, make a run at it, then you gotta have money in the bank. I mean, you can't. It's not like you see in the movies where you're like, oh, I've got a business idea. I'm going to go into the bank and get a loan and start my business idea. It doesn't actually work like that. No one's going to give you a loan for nothing unless it's like a family member or something like that. And you really don't want to go down that road. So I guess what I would recommend is, like you mentioned, Lean Six Sigma, right? There's this whole movement in the startup world called the Lean Startup. It's a great book, and there's others like it. It starts small, learn as fast as you can while blowing through as little money as you can, and the goal is to pivot or iterate from plan A to the plan that eventually actually works with blowing through as little money as possible. You're going to blow through some, but that's essentially how you start something. And if you have the itch, make a run at it. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Diesel Stories Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and check out dieselstories.com for more episodes.